Okay, so picture this. A letter you use every single day. Just a simple character.
Mm-hmm.
What if its shape, its sound? What if they weren't just like random symbols? What if they were actually, literally, born from your body?
Born from the body. That's definitely a hook.
Exactly.
No.
That's the really surprising idea we're digging into today. This whole deep dive is about the letter H and this fascinating theory connecting it directly to how our bodies work. Specifically, the act of lifting something heavy.
Heavy lifting. Okay, now that sounds way more interesting than, the usual story about Phoenician alphabets or whatever. What kind of sources are pushing this idea?
Yeah, it's pretty wild. We're looking at material that kind of sits at the crossroads of a couple of fields. There's biomechanics, how our bodies move, breathe, exert force.
No.
And then there's this theory called Odam OT for short. And its whole premise is that language isn't arbitrary. It's deeply rooted in our physical experiences, how we actually interact with the world.
Embodied language. Got it. So Odom connects the physical body to the sounds and maybe even shapes of language.
Precisely. So the mission here, for you listening, is to really unpack this with us. How could the sound of H and the shape, the actual letter H, and maybe even what it means, how could all that be linked through just physical effort and breath?
It's a big claim. Could definitely change how you see something as simple as a letter.
Totally. So let's start with that foundation then, this Odom theory. What's the core idea the source material lays out? How does it say language even starts?
Well, the fundamental idea proposed here is it's quite a departure from the standard linguistic view that language is mostly arbitrary symbols we've agreed on.
Right, the usual social contract idea.
Exactly. Odom suggests something different. It argues that the basic sounds of language, the phonemes, they actually emerge from our physical interactions, our bodies moving, reacting, responding to the environment.
So the sounds mimic things or reflect actions.
Yeah, they're seen as kind of echoing or mimicking aspects of the world or our own bodily functions and sounds.
Okay, that's a pretty powerful concept.
Yeah.
Sounds aren't random, they're tied to actual experience.
Yeah.
And the source highlights the H sound specifically, right?
Mm-hmm.
As linked to, what, exertion,
Yeah.
breath.
Mm-hmm. It points to H as being naturally tied to some really core physiological functions, things like physical exertion, effort, exhaustion, even just basic breath control.
So the sound itself has this physical grounding tied to a state or an action. Let's zoom in on that sound then. The H, the source calls it a barrierless breath. What does that mean phonetically? How's it made?
From a production standpoint, yeah, it's unique. You make the H sound by letting airflow really rapidly straight through your glottis. That's the space between your vocal cords. But the key is the glottis is open.
Open, okay.
And crucially, unlike almost every other consonant, there's no real blockage, no significant obstruction from your tongue or your lips or your teeth getting in the way.
So it really is just air, like just pushed out.
Pretty much. Pure airflow. The source highlights a few key things. It's voiceless, meaning your vocal cords aren't vibrating like they do for, say, a Z sound.
Right.
It's aspirated, which basically means it is that pure breath component. And it's described as energy releasing.
Energy releasing. And barrierless.
Yeah.
Because nothing stops it. It's just whoosh, pure breath.
Exactly. It's one of the purest breath sounds we actually make. And the source directly links this specific sound quality to those experiences of effort, release, and physical strain.
Effort, release, strain.
Oh.
Okay, I see the thread now. This must be where the heavy lifting comes back in.
Yeah.
So what does the source explain about the biomechanics? What happens when we lift something really heavy?
Okay, so when you brace yourself to lift something with significant weight, your body kicks multiple systems into high gear, right? Your muscles tense up musculoskeletal system, your brain coordinates its neural system, and critically, your respiratory system, your breathing, plays a huge role in stabilizing your core. That's vital to generate force safely and avoid injury.
Right. I know people often hold their breath, don't they? That Valsalva maneuver thing.
That's one way, yeah. Holding your breath builds up internal pressure, helps brace the spine. But the source points out another really important breathing response during intense strain.
Which is?
Which is a controlled or sometimes even a forced exhalation. Pushing air out. This helps maintain that core stability even while you're actively pushing or pulling.
Okay, so you might breathe out hard while lifting. And what kind of sound naturally comes out when you do that, especially under, like, maximum effort?
Well, this is where the connection gets really interesting. The source suggests that a very common natural vocalization during that kind of sharp, forceful exhale under load is precisely that voiceless, breathy sound, the H.
Huh. when you heave something. Or sometimes people go H, if it's really
Yeah,
tough.
exactly. That huh sound of exertion, or those repeated breathy pulses. And think about how that sound is made.
Does it match the H characteristics we just talked about?
Perfectly, according to the source. It happens without obstruction. It's just air being forced out. It's pure breath fitting that aspirated label. And it directly maps onto that physical output of energy and strain. It literally sounds like the effort.
Wow. Okay. The sound H is the sound of effort.
That actually makes a surprising amount of sense when you put it like that. But okay, the shape. How does the letter H visually connect to lifting? That feels like a bigger jump.
It does seem like a lead, but this is where the embodiment idea extends to the visual form. The source asks us to consider the typical body posture when you're bracing to lift something heavy. You're gripping it, probably with both hands.
Yeah, you're usually bent over a bit,
Hmm.
arms down, maybe slightly forward, hands grabbing onto whatever it is, one on each side.
Exactly that posture. Arms extended down or forward, hands gripping. Now, critically, where is your torso in that setup?
My torso. It's between my arms, right? Kind of connecting them.
Yes. Your torso is positioned right there between your arms, acting as the bridge, connecting the limbs, doing the work. Now, picture the capital letter H. Oh, wait a second. The two vertical lines, like the arms reaching down and the horizontal bar, connecting them. That's like the torso.
That's the proposed visual link. The source argues the letter H isn't just some abstract shape someone drew. It's presented as a kind of symbolic reflection, almost a visual echo of that specific human posture during the act of lifting.
That's actually kind of startling. So the shape might look like the action that sounds like the H sound.
And this is really where the Odam-Tilly theory comes in to help frame it. It sees letters not just as arbitrary marks, but as what it calls semantic codifications, symbols that actually encode meaning derived from these recurring physical or environmental events.
Semantic codification, meaning they carry the meaning baked in from that original experience, that sensory input.
Essentially, yes. The theory suggests that sounds and associated shapes get linked to specific experiences, and through repetition, they become symbols representing aspects of those experiences.
Okay, let's break down H again through that OT lens then, based on the source. The sound H, it symbolizes breath, effort, openness.
Correct. Captures that sound of breath under pressure, without blockage.
And the shape, H, visually mirrors that specific body structure, arms parallel, torso connecting during the lift.
That's the idea. And the whole situation, the context of lifting something heavy that provides the rich sensory experience that ties the sound and the shape together, it's all unified by that physical act.
So the conclusion the source draws, it's pretty profound then. H isn't just a sound marker or a shape. It's potentially encoding that whole human experience, the forceful action, the breath, all in one symbol.
Right. It's like a miniature diagram of the effort, the sound, and the posture all rolled into one character. It's described not just as a letter, but as a living symbol.
A living symbol. A breath, a sound, a shape, an action.
Wow. And the source even frames it quite poetically, suggesting H encodes, quote, the unobstructed force of human will, the push against gravity, the effort to rise, and the breath that proves our struggle.
That gives you pause, doesn't it? Thinking you had a simple letter carrying that much weight, potentially, all that meaning packed into something we barely notice.
It really does. And it makes you wonder, if one letter like H could potentially encode such a fundamental physical human experience, the struggle against gravity itself, what other basic human actions or sounds or experiences might be hiding in plain sight within the shapes and sounds of the rest of the alphabet?
What else is encoded in there that we've just forgotten? That's definitely something to think about.